Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation and today's episode. We are going to be diving into a really cool article. It is entitled Effects of Fasting on Metabolic Hormones and Functions, a narrative review. This is coming out of the Gentendo Medical Journal and the Medical Society. It was an article that was released in late 2024. So excited to talk about all the amazing benefits of fasting. We'll, of course, apply it to a fasting lifestyle. And excited to dive into that with you in just a few moments. If you're new to the podcast, welcome in. Thanks for giving us a shot. Thanks for finding us. Would love to have you learn more about who we are and what we do. If you want to know how fasting's transformed our lives and why we do an episode each and every week and why we have our challenges and our resources on our website, you can head to the show notes, grab all the free resources. The links are there for you. And all the information on the upcoming challenge as well. Yes. But if you are new and you want to learn more about what fasting actually did tangibly for us and how it transformed our lives, head back to episode 0, episode 1, give it a listen, and you'll learn a little bit more about why we do what we do here at Fasting for Life. So if you're a long-term listener, again, welcome in. Thanks for being with us another week. Thanks for your likes, rates, reviews, downloads, and all of the support that you give us. Tommy, we have a new 5-star review, and we always like to give the shout-outs to the folks that took the time to figure out how to leave a review, because I like technology. I don't love it. So it's like, hey, where do you leave a review? I don't know. Let's click this button, and does this work? So we always like to give a shout-out to the folks that take the time to go ahead and drop a review.
Yeah.
So Tommy, the shout out is from Penniless57. Glad I found you. Go ahead.
Glad I found you. Yeah, on Apple Podcasts. So, hi, I'm a 66-year-old guy with 4 years of fasting in the bag. Way to go, Penniless. Lost 65 pounds at my peak, but have been hanging off the wagon for about 2 years. I need to trim about 20 again. So that's great. I'm glad to hear that it's not more. So sometimes we're gonna have those backslides, but guess what? You're putting the brakes on that process much more quickly than you might have in the past, and that's a huge step forward right there. So it also he continues here, discovered your podcast while on a solo cross-country drive this week, where I'm working on a 7-day fast. Wow. Woo! I've absorbed about a dozen great shows, and you have pulled me completely back into the game. Wow, I love that.
Welcome back, Penniless 57.
Like you never left. So love the details, granularity, specific, whatever you call them. Thank you. I'm back. I can feel the excitement from Penniless 57 here. So thanks for leaving that review. That's inspiring right there. Absolutely. And keep listening, because we're going to continue the conversation with you. And we want to hear when you get those 20 down to 10, and when you get them completely off and you're on the maintenance game. We want to hear from you again. Please let us know when you reach that point, because we want to celebrate with you too. So this is really, really, really exciting stuff. And I want everybody listening to know that we always think about fasting as a lifestyle rather than a diet method. So, and that's not where we came to fasting, but at some point we realized that that's absolutely what it has to be for long-term success. So we're going to continue to frame that out as we go into today's conversation and next week's conversation as well.
We're going to talk specifically about that diet mentality, the on-off mentality. So Penniless 57, 6 years of success, 2 years off the wagon. At least it wasn't, like Tommy said, more. Good job getting back on track, finding that initial motivation, and so grateful that we could be a part of getting you there and keeping you inspired. So keep tuning in. Love to hear from you. And we're going to talk about some of those lifestyle applications on how to make it a lifestyle and not that on-off mentality today. And like you mentioned in next week's episode as well, Tommy. So this study was really cool. And it was a narrative review. So it was a big picture overview on the effects of fasting on metabolic hormones and functions. Because we typically take a lot of research articles, it might be in the diabetes space, the obesity space, the blood sugar management, exercise, sleep, because we really want to look at the whole body, the whole individual,
Mhm.
right? Fasting in concept is easy, right? You just don't eat. But fasting in application is difficult when you add in social schedules and spouses and friends and family and travel and work and stress and all this other stuff, right?
Sure.
So the big picture starting point of why we're going to talk about this is because there are so many benefits to fasting. It just comes down to a personalized, specialized, like you need swings at the plate, you need reps, you need practice, you need fasting tools in your tool belt to figure out how to stay consistent 80% of the time and not have this, oh, I was great for a year, now I'm off for a year, I'm back for a year. And I just saw a post from Pam in the Fasting for Life community, and it said, I'm back at it again.
Hmm.
Today is day 4 of 20 hours fasting. I started walking again. Uh,
Nice.
just posting for accountability. I'm doing this for the month of August. We'll decide then the next move. We'll probably need ADF, right? So
Mm.
this speaks to the what lever should I be pulling? Am I doing the right thing? Where is fasting the long-term solution? And we truly believe that an intermittent fasting lifestyle is absolutely should be part of pretty much everybody's long-term health, weight loss, and longevity plan. So
Yeah.
the cool thing about this study is in big picture starting point of why we really liked it is they were looking at the occurrence of metabolic syndrome and its related diseases such as diabetes are steadily rising. We see the numbers. We know the stats. 75% of the population is overweight or obese. Inherently, the immediate weight is not an issue, but it's the long-term effects over time, the
Hmm.
increase in cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke, chronic inflammation, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, all of that can be absolutely managed and handled with getting the weight off and using a fasting lifestyle. So they also take into account modern food choices, sedentary lifestyles. We've really seen this shift in our health as a society. So fasting's been
Hmm.
practiced for religious purpose all over the world long time before science showed the benefits of it. And
Accidentally before that, even before religious purposes, just for
right,
food scarcity purposes,
right.
accidentally, there was plenty of fasting going on, right?
Yep. Feast or famine.
Sure.
Thank goodness. I mean, thank goodness we don't live in that environment anymore, right?
Right.
But we do live in a very food noise filled, obesogenic, highly ultra processed, refined food, convenient food. You can heck, you can just DoorDash anything you want to your door at any moment in time,
Yeah.
right?
Dopamine driven,
Dopamine driven, right?
yeah,
Yep.
it's tricky out there.
So when we're looking at the overall effects of fasting on glucose and fat metabolism, those are the two biggest focus points of the study.
Hmm.
And typically, what we focus on too: blood sugar management, blood sugar regulation, and fat metabolism. How can we burn the fat, lose the weight, increase our lean body composition, and end up being a lean fasting machine at a healthy weight, living a full life, right? So we want fat metabolism and blood sugar management. So the cool thing is fasting triggers a whole cascade of changes in the hormonal, microbiome, and enzymatic environments in our body, which lead to the optimal glucose regulation and fat metabolism. So we're going to look at fasting-induced metabolic function changes. We're going to look at sex hormones, lipid-released hormones, so fat oxidizing hormones, growth hormone, insulin, the biome, and really, again, just driving that leading to lipolysis and the release of the fat from our fat cells into our bloodstream so our body can process it and we can lose the weight once and for all.
Right. So the real balance point, what we're looking for here is what is the best way to fast at different points along our fasting journey.
Yep.
So if we have weight to lose, or we've already taken the weight off, or maybe if you've never had weight to lose, but then you're still trying to optimize for longevity, for health purposes, to make sure your blood works in order, and things like that, just for body composition and overall health purposes. So different fasting tools, you'll respond differently depending on where you are in your fasting journey and what your overall physiology is like. You'll likely respond differently than potentially somebody else. Like not all there's it's not a one size fits all kind of
Right.
thing, which I think is important. And that's where some of the magic comes in for an article like this, where they're looking at a whole host of different fasting protocols, across a wide variation of patient population too, not necessarily patients in the clinical term, but just for the research purposes, because not everybody had blood sugar related issues or even weight to lose. And then they were looking at how they responded to different fasting protocols. So that's where I feel like it's really cool as a kind of a broad strokes across, multiple like facets of fasting lifestyles, because where we can go from there is what's the best method to apply and why, and what's the purpose. Because one of the things that we always hear is it can be tough to I feel like I'm playing the waiting game for my fasting timer, and
Right.
the real good, like the pivotal switch happens when instead of counting down the hours, you're counting up the benefits. And so when you can kind of
Ooh, so hold
understand,
on. Hold
yeah,
on. Say that one again,
it,
slowly.
the real pivotal switch happens mentally when instead of counting down the hours, you're counting up the benefits of your fast. So
How
then
have we never said that before?
well, my dad actually texted me, I'm paraphrasing from him, but he texted me something along those lines after a particular coaching call conversation that we had. And I sent it over to him and I said, you need to listen to this conversation. And it was just hitting him in a different way, because he's used to like, hey, I'd like to get in a 30 or a 40-hour fast, but he would always feel like there was this not really so much of fear of missing out, but just that it was a countdown. And that gets frustrating because you're
I
using
just think of the
willpower,
song, The Final
the final
Countdown,
countdown,
right?
right? But then it almost feels like
Sorry, everybody.
I'm I'm never at the final part of that countdown. If it feels like when the countdown starts, you might be at 10 or 20% fasted, and then it just gets increasingly like frustrating from there potentially. Anybody else
And
relate
never
to
mind
this
looking
ever?
forward to the meal and then breaking the fast and then doing things you didn't want to do and all the decisions that come around your nutrition window and feeding opportunity, right?
Right. Absolutely. So I feel like when you have these things more front of mind, like what are the benefits of this next fast? Why did I set this fast? It's not just so that 6 months from now I see a lower number on the scale. That's not all that motivating in the moment. But if you're thinking about the cellular, the hormonal benefits, the things that are happening beneficial to your body, whether you're trying to heal something or improve or just optimize something that's already okay in your body, that's much more powerful. And if we can keep that front of mind, that's going to be highly motivating. So I feel like this conversation is going to be helpful in kind of loading up the hopper for that side of the mental battle, the mental equation.
Yep. How to make it sustainable is what I'm hearing there, right? So
For sure.
this was a narrative review approach. So the authors opted for a narrative review due to the large discrepancies in the fasting methods across the studies. So there was 13 main studies, which made the meta-analysis difficult, hence the narrative review.
Mhm.
So it's more of a broader qualitative selection that contribute to the overall understanding of what fasting is doing on all of those metrics that I mentioned earlier. And we'll go one by one and just land the plane real simply on the benefits. So we can get away from the fasting countdown to the what did you say it one more time, Tommy?
Yeah. So instead of counting down the fasting time, you're counting up the benefits of your
The
fast.
fasting benefits.
Hmm.
Right. Man, that is I think that's our new slogan for the rest of 2025. So
Right.
So this is going to be more of that overall understanding rather than the strict quantitative inclusion criteria that's in the systematic reviews or the meta-analyses. So 13 main studies, different fasting methods. So time-restricted eating without calorie restriction, Ramadan fasting protocol, 16-8, alternate day fasting, 5-2, all of these different various, air quotes, named versions of fasting, right?
Hmm.
Were all included in the study. So let's go through the results. Just boom, 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 all the benefits. And then we'll talk about the lifestyle takeaways. This is where we're going to talk about the increasing your fasting reps and your tools in your tool belt for where you are on your journey. Hence the shout out from the podcast from Penniless 57 and Pam's post in the Fasting for Life community.
Hmm.
Those types of situations, where you are on your journey and what does that look like and what should you be doing and what can you feel comfortable and confident in doing with your fasting adaptation. So let's go through some of the actual results. So we're going to be looking at the metabolic function, and we're going to be looking at primarily glucose and fat metabolism. We will talk a little bit about the gut microbiome, as well.
Mm.
But 24-hour fast 3 times a week in women. So this is about intermittent fasting and glucose and fat metabolism. It increased antioxidant activity, right? It decreased weight. It decreased morning glucose. It improved A1C. It improved fasting glucose in 2 different groups in one of the studies. It lowered blood pressure. It lowered cholesterol. It lowered triglycerides. So who's counting on the fasting benefit chart?
Right.
Okay. And we will talk about the negative side effects of fasting or consistent fasting and some of the pitfalls.
Yeah.
Interesting, the study didn't mention them, but we're going to give you some in the lifestyle component of today's conversation. This was a 16-hour intermittent fasting for 12 weeks. These were the metabolic syndrome patients. Lowered blood pressure, lowered cholesterol, lowered triglycerides, lowered LDL, lowered fasting glucose, and insulin. Another protocol was a 16-8 protocol for 8 weeks in resistance-trained men. We'll talk about this. It decreased testosterone. So red flag, we'll talk about it. Increase in adiponectin, benefit, and decrease in leptin in the fasting group only, benefit. Leptin's one of your hunger hormones. When you have insulin resistance or weight loss resistance, you can also have leptin resistance. It affects the brain and your hunger cues, your satiety signals, right? Which makes your nutrition window or opportunities more difficult sometimes. So just in 3 times a week, 24-hour fast, 8 weeks in women, 18 to 20-hour fast daily for 2 weeks in diabetes patients, a 5-2, so a very low calorie day, 500 or 600 calorie day, and then ad libitum eating the rest of the week. A 16-hour intermittent fasting for 12 weeks in metabolic syndrome patients, and a 16-8 protocol for 8 weeks in resistance-trained men. So increased antioxidants, decreased weight, decreased morning glucose, improved A1C, improved fasting glucose, lowered blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, LDL, fasting glucose, and insulin. So when that fasting timer is ticking down, these are the things that we want to be focusing on, right?
Yeah. So when we're thinking about what's going on within the body, you're like, you walk through the kitchen or you walk by, you smell the smell of an outdoor restaurant, whatever the case may be, that's like a reminder that, hey, I'm not eating, but I kind of like to be. And then, hey, let me take a look. Oh, how's my fasting timer doing? And yeah, I'm still in a fast right here. The mental, that food noise that can come in, it's almost like fasting noise at that point, fasting food noise. It can be a little tricky, or it can be a nuisance at the very least, and it can be tricky or problematic at worst. And so when we're kind of faced with that, it's good to be reminded, or to have these little reminders of what were those benefits that are actually happening right now. And sometimes you can feel it, like a lot of times you can feel your more stable energy. You know that if you break your fast, especially with something that's more tempting or like a restaurant related meal, you go to break, especially a longer fast, the longer that it is, and the more you break it with a richer, more calorically dense meal, like especially a restaurant meal, you're likely to feel much worse after that meal than you did before the meal. And if you have enough fasting reps, like you mentioned earlier, Scott, that might be fairly obvious to you, but if you have fewer reps, it might not be obvious yet. And so that can be one of those little reminders that can be motivating in the moment. But especially when you have an emotional time, or maybe you're bored, and just like you've been saying no to a lot of things, it can be kind of tempting in the moment. So understanding those benefits, what's happening within the body, within your physiology, and how it's balancing, and what's happening on a hormonal level is really, really important, because you just mentioned 24-hour fast. 24-hour fast can be it doesn't have to be a perfect 24-hour fast, because this is a common question that we get too. It can be a 23 or a 23 and a half hour fast, essentially just a one meal a day. That's a simplified, that's an OMAD, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same meal every single day. But if you're going from one lunch to another lunch, or one dinner to another dinner, you're probably hitting around 23 or 23 and a half hours. You're getting the benefits that they're talking about within the study at the 24-hour mark.
And that was 3 times a week, right? So let's look specifically, and we'll come back and discuss the testosterone decrease that we saw. That was in lean, fit men, and we'll have a conversation around that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
By the way, in the obesity studies that we've looked at, testosterone actually goes up. And we'll talk about the mechanism of why that is. So that's a
Yep.
benefit. And then, should you be doing long extended fasts as a lean fit male? No. You should be using intermittent fasting as a hormone regulator, sleep optimizer,
Mm-hmm.
energy booster, performance enhancer,
Yeah.
right? You're going to be wanting to have full nutrition days
Yeah.
and eating opportunities,
Yep. With
right?
intentional nutrition. Yep.
With intentional
Exactly.
nutrition. You don't need to be doing longer fasts. Now, if you want to do a long fast once a year as kind of a reset or a 3-day water, sure, absolutely. Love it. Keep
Mm-hmm.
that skill, that tool in your tool belt sharp, right?
Yeah.
But there's no need. So that's why the mechanism of that, we'll talk about that in just a minute, but that's why we saw that in that one study.
Mm-hmm.
So with Ramadan fasting in healthy individuals, there wasn't much change in BMI. There was really no significant change in body composition, glucose metabolism, or cognitive function.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is Ramadan fasting in healthy individuals. Again,
Right.
at
Right.
14 hours, that's really not fasting to us. That's kind of like not eating dinner and then going to sleep and then just forgetting to have breakfast, right? For like an hour, right?
Yeah.
So not a real fasting lever.
But
Go ahead.
what also is not oftentimes talked about for Ramadan fasting is that what about those late meals? You can be pushing your calories and your insulin load way later into the evening, right?
Yep.
And so that can be very physiologically suboptimal. That can be problematic. So that can actually be erasing some of the physiological benefits that you would have just with the compartmentalization of eating. So I don't know if anybody is just front loading those calories. I'm sure some people probably are,
Yep.
where they're having the early meal, but maybe not the late meal, or maybe it's smaller in the evening. But I definitely know that there are some large meals going on in the evening too. So that I don't think that's ever differentiated, at least within
Right.
the research that I've reviewed.
Let's look at the 72-hour plus categories. So they looked at 72 hours fasting, prolonged fasting, which is what we don't really ever recommend, long 48 to 72 hour fast over and over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some changes in insulin sensitivity. We typically see that go down with prolonged fasts,
Mm-hmm.
which is why, especially in our challenges and coaching, we don't do a lot of those. We want more of that sustainable daily type action or lifestyle adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
So at the 72-hour fast, again, in healthy, lean subjects, there was some insulin sensitivity decrease and a shift to fat oxidation as the main energy source. So that's that shift to ketosis,
Yeah.
which is great if you're trying to manage some type of neurological issue or chronic headaches or chronic inflammation or reversing diabetes, but it's not a long-term thing that you should be doing. Even back in 1911, Upton Sinclair in the fasting cure, he said no sane man or woman would do 2 to 3 day fast over and over and over again.
Right.
No, thank you. Like that sounds miserable, right? That's not a long-term sustainable plan. Yes, you can get the weight off, but then what? What are you going to do?
Yeah. You better be developing some other fasting tools in the meantime as well.
Yep. So again, long fasting in normal, healthy men, it did decrease glucose and increase free fatty acids, even though we saw a couple of those down regulation of the things that we don't want to see. Again, lean, healthy men,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when we're looking at specifically the leptin and adiponectin, leptin, which is one of those hunger hormones, decreases with fasting and energy restriction. Fantastic.
Yeah.
We want to see that balance. We want to see those hormones regulate. We want to see that metabolic function increase.
Well, leptin imbalance is a big part of having excess fat stores, because those excess fat stores are communicating to the rest of the cells in your body. So that's one of the tricky parts. And we have to shrink those fat cells. That's why we talk about getting the weight off and getting it off quickly, rather than this kind of slow mentality that we hear within the diet culture. It's like, no, we can get the weight off quickly. That's better, because the signals that are coming out from those fat cells are wreaking havoc all across the body. So part of that is a leptin imbalance. And you have the fact that there's a blood-brain barrier aspect of that, which is that's also communicating back. Those fat cells are actually communicating with cells in the brain that then make cravings and other processes and other food thoughts like worse than they should be, which is why as the weight starts to come off, you can see a quick improvement in that continues as you get more of the weight off.
Two more studies to highlight. It was a group of obese patients for 12 months. They did ADF, alternate day fasting, versus calorie restriction. Both reduced body weight similarly, right? Great. But ADF led to greater reductions in fasting insulin and insulin resistance than daily calorie restriction.
Yeah, I believe it.
And then a 24-hour fast 3 times a week in men with type 2 diabetes, small study, all discontinued insulin therapy entirely within 5 to 18 days.
Wow. 5 to 18 days. That's not something I'm hearing many endocrinologists say.
Right?
Yeah.
Like what? So,
well, I mean, we've absolutely seen that though. Wear a
100%.
continuous glucose monitor and go from a non-fasting lifestyle into a fasting lifestyle, and all of a sudden you can see some really big shifts in your glucose balance, and it doesn't take all that long. But when you're on that roller coaster of my blood sugar spiking because I'm eating all throughout the day, and then I'm having to control these blood sugar spikes with insulin, that's a tough merry-go-round to jump off of.
Yep. This was the situation with my dad, 70 years old, 30-year diabetic. He decided to start doing some fasting. Now he's off 15 medications. He's off 120 units of insulin. He's lost 65 pounds. He's under 200 pounds for the first time since before my mom and him have been married over 50 years, since before they got married.
Wow.
And they're here visiting, and like I literally have a to-do list of like, hey, Dad, these are the projects that I want to work on with you. And the other day I walked downstairs and he's power washed the entire backyard.
Right.
Like the whole thing, it's done. And it was 98 degrees.
Wow.
Here in Houston, Texas. And I'm like, hey, Dad, how you doing? He's like, good. I'm like, 5 years ago, you would have been asleep at the lunch table.
Right.
So just amazing the changes that can happen. So
night and day.
One thing I did want to mention in the lean fit men and the lean fit women studies is that conversation around testosterone. So in the short term, doing extended fast as a lean fit individual, not needed from a fasting lifestyle, right? We want more of a 16-8, 2 full nutrition days a week type scenario. But in the obese men studies we've seen, or the very low calorie diet, or the longer repeat fasting studies, testosterone actually increases in the obese male category because of the weight loss, and it's via improved testicular function and less aromatase. So you're actually increasing testosterone by getting the weight off. So for me, I mean, huge win. If you're carrying that extra weight, that's where we started the conversation today. If you're carrying that extra weight, inherently in the moment, it's not deleterious to your health.
Yep.
Right? Like it's the accumulation of day over day, week over week, month over month, year over year, decade over decade, that starts to have an effect on your metabolic function. So
yeah, I literally went from sub 300 testosterone. I think my lowest was somewhere around 180 or maybe 220, and this was like during my peak weight, and within probably losing about 30 pounds, so about like a little less than half of my goal to lose, I saw an improvement where I was close to 100% up from that. And then I also that continued to improve as I continued to get more of the weight off, and that was a huge thing, because I was never in my doctor's office hearing that, hey, your low testosterone is probably due to this, at the time 30 or 40 or so pounds that I was being told that I should lose. Obviously, I knew that I should lose it too. And so when you look at the studies. When you look at the studies that are the healthy, lean individuals, the tricky part, what tends to happen subconsciously in those studies, is that they have a reduced caloric intake. And that's part of the trouble, is that without an intentional full nutrition, like you mentioned, it's easy to live a fasting lifestyle and then under consume. And so essentially, we don't normally talk about 16-8 being an over fasting, under consuming kind of situation, but it can be, especially when you're lean. So when you're lean, it's not to say that you shouldn't be doing something like a 16-8. You absolutely can, but you should be very intentional and from time to time kind of calibrate your plates and make sure that you're consuming sufficiently. Also, making sure that you're getting a good amount of natural good carbohydrates in there as well, because lean individuals, especially ones who are on a fasting lifestyle, a lot of them are eating lower carb because they know that they feel better, they have more control over the scale. Well, guess what? Hormonal production requires carbohydrates also. So hormonal production will go down with less carbohydrates. So macronutrients matter as well. So in very intentional nutrition is a big kind of answer to that question right there.
Yeah, we did a whole episode on a study, and I should have looked it up ahead of time. It just popped into my head now, though, where we talked about, the leaner you get, the more carbohydrates you require. Now, we're not saying eat 250 grams of carbs a day, refined ultra processed foods, but nature's carbs, like
Hmm.
things that are natural, things that are not things you cook at home, right? Potatoes, rice, sweet potatoes, starchy veggies, those types of things. Like your body is going to benefit from that when you get to that maintenance goal and you're working on body composition, right? So, just in summary of all the benefits, intermittent fasting generally improves glucose control, insulin sensitivity, and body composition, increases fat oxidation, leptin balance, adiponectin balance, growth hormone increases, especially during those longer fasts, 24 to 48 hours. And here's the key is the takeaway that we mentioned is it varies by protocol and population, right? So what are those
Hmm.
tools? What does that lifestyle application look like? The benefits are strong for both prevention and therapy of metabolic conditions. A study came out in 2018 and it was glamorized in 2021, sadly, that 88% of the US population is metabolically unfit. And if we look at what happened during the COVID years, the populations that were most affected were the populations that had metabolic syndrome or metabolic dysfunction.
Right.
The older populations, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, respiratory issues, all of those. That's where we saw that kind of come to light. So let's apply, Tommy, some lifestyle takeaways to increase your fasting reps and tools in your fasting tool belt. So we want to think of this as in like terms of a skill set. Like if you try to do something new, if you try to manage your finances or work on your marriage or parent your kids or take up golf, for instance, you need practice, right? So fasting is a practice. It's not an all or nothing diet. It's not an all or nothing on off type mentality.
Mm.
So like exercise, you build your fasting fitness over time in a progressive, adaptable way, which means you need repetitions. You need to fail forward, right? You need to interpret, hey, I felt good, I didn't feel good, this happened, this. You need to take stock of kind of where you are and avoid that on-off cheat day mentality and really focus more on the learning, the listening, and adjusting of the process.
Yeah. And so when you're talking about these individual pieces, one thing to keep in mind is like not not just trying for perfection, because when we try for perfection, what happens is we tend to put a lot of things together, and then because that feels like the perfect thing. Hey, I want to get my fasting timer every single day. I want to be going to the gym. I want to get my water in. I want to get my salt in. I want to make just all the best food choices. Maybe I want to eat low carb, or maybe it's carnivore, or maybe it's vegan. Like whatever the case may be, you want to like stick to something perfectly, but you end up wrapping all these things together. Then the trouble becomes when something slips, everything slips. And so avoiding putting all of these things together as far as like I'm on the diet or I'm on the right track because all the things are going right. The difference between that, which can feel a little bit weird, and it did for me at first for sure, is making some of the things foundational where you're going for a few little small wins, little small actions first thing in the morning. We've talked about doing things like supplementing with your salt. That's a Himalayan salt, a Redmond's, a Baja Gold, an Element,
A
whatever that
mineral
is.
salt, not table
Yeah,
salt.
yeah, for sure. Getting in your trace minerals too, taking in some water before your morning caffeine, something like that is a deliberate decision, and it may sound like a small one, but it's a subconscious reminder at the very beginning of the day that my lifestyle is here and I've already made a lifestyle choice. So it's not you're sticking to your fasting timer is not going to be the first lifestyle choice that you made for the day. You've already made a few. And that's the beauty of that. And if you want to integrate some exercise into that, take 5 minutes in the morning, do a few stretches, do a few jumping jacks, do a few push-ups, do some wall squats. You could do something really, really small in the morning that doesn't take much time. But again, you've made a lifestyle decision right then. And then it's easier to stick to your fasting timer. It's easier to make a good intentional food choice
Mhm.
most of the time whenever you do go to break that fast. And that's the difference between an on-off diet and a lifestyle. It kind of starts there with that small fork in the road, just for thinking about those small things.
So stay hydrated, right? Manage
Hmm.
electrolytes. I did forget to mention the effects on the gut, Tommy, so I want to mention that real
Oh,
quick
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
one of the sticking points with fasting is that concern over hunger and kind of the grumbly tummy where it kind of feels a little uneasy. So it was cool. They looked at the effects on the microbiome, and we noticed that people get, less gut volatility, better once you adapt a fasting lifestyle, better, more consistent bowel movements, less heartburn, all of those things around the gut. So when they looked at IF and intermittent fasting, it can enhance the composition and diversity of the gut microflora,
Hmm.
potentially reducing gut permeability and improving hormone levels like testosterone. And gut microbiota are linked to metabolic diseases and are influenced by sex hormones. So we really want to make sure that we have our gut in a good place, our brain health, our liver, gut health axis all connected. And fasting really gives you one lever you can pull that's going to help kind of benefit or balance some of those things out. And we notice that if you're struggling to stay consistent with fasting because of some of that grumbly gut, stomach, hunger cues, uneasiness, then that key point is that hydration. And it's
Hmm.
not just more water, it's managing the electrolytes. So adding that salt in on a pinch of salt on a daily basis. We like to use the elements, elementes in this house, especially on the hot, humid days when I do my
Yep.
workouts outside. I'll add that in to make sure I'm staying hydrated. And that really helps calm my mind, which is the next piece is, using like reframing your mindset around fasting, just like you had mentioned earlier with our new catchphrase for 2025.
Yeah.
Um, a,
Counting up the benefits instead of
Counting up
counting
the
down the
benefits.
timer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A fast is an active choice, not a deprivation,
Ah, yeah.
right? And then you need to do some form of tracking. So, just log how you feel, log your fasting windows, log the food you ate, and just know that if you did hit some roadblocks, it's not a failure, right? It's data, it's feedback. It's knowing that, hey, I'm going to be moving forward with this lifestyle, and truly to adapt a lifestyle, you just need more of those repetitions. And
I
when
think
you
that's
break, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah. No, no. Go ahead.
So the last two pieces is when you break your fast. So prepare your break fast meals.
Hmm.
Prepare your meals to avoid that binging, I'm so ravenous type scenario. So break your fast with protein, some healthy fats, some veggies, right? That's going to keep you fuller longer. It's going to give you the right satiety and hunger cues. We say protein doesn't happen by accident, right? So put
Hmm.
some planning, just a little bit of planning into when you break your fast, and it can go an absolute long way, not just for how you feel about your decisions that day, but also how your next fasting window is going to go the following day.
Oh, absolutely. Think about your fast and your fasting lifestyle as a chain link, right? Where one day really does link to the next, because one day will affect the next, in your hunger hormones, in your hunger pangs, in your food thoughts and food noise, in the amount of glycogen that you have to burn through before you get back into those long-term fat stores, getting into that state of nutritional ketosis and fat burning and greater insulin sensitivity. All of these kind of things matter. So, and to just highlight one of the points that you just made, what I heard there was not expecting the process of learning and like getting your reps into your fasting lifestyle to be perfect. And because we've heard a lot from people who said, yeah, I've tried that fasting thing before and it didn't really work for me. And then, my immediate thought is, like, let's go back to that moment when you felt like it didn't work for you. What happened? What were the conclusions that you came to, and why? What were you trying, and how were you feeling? Because usually it comes down to a matter of, you were gathering data. It wasn't comfortable data, but nobody really ever said that it was going to be all comfortable data. We just hoped that it would be, but it doesn't mean that it's not working. It means, like you said, Scott, you're going through the learning process. You're going through the learning curve of it. And also, a lot of that is your body getting more efficient at doing something that, frankly, it hasn't had to do before. Because if you've been gaining weight or maintaining your weight for a long time, your body's not really been in fat burning mode. And that's not a comfortable place to be. There's new enzymes, new concentrations of things that have to be produced that haven't been for years and decades, and probably a lifetime. So even just your body figuring out that part is part of what you have to learn how to make your food decisions and your fasting decisions that kind of go along and support that process too. And that's what we're talking about here with getting the reps in and being patient with the process and looking for progress rather than perfection to build a lifestyle out of this rather than another diet.
Yep, absolutely. So if you're looking for more resources, or where do you start, or how do you continue, or how do you get back on track, head to the show notes, grab one of our resources. The Blueprint to Fasting for Fat Loss has a bunch of different fasting schedules in it, the who, what, when, where, and why of fasting, and why we believe it is a tool that everybody should be using, especially if you're trying to lose weight and improve your health and longevity. So just remember, and you just said this, Tommy, as we sign off, fasting isn't about perfection or restriction. It's about building skills and flexibility, tuning into what your body needs so you can enjoy better energy, sharper mind, and most importantly, lasting metabolic health benefits, one fasting rep at a time.
Love it.
So, Tommy, appreciate the conversation as always, man, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.